Sure, trying new lunch recipes can be exciting, but let's be honest, nothing compares to a timeless 1970s classic. Many lunches that once filled brown bags and lunchtime menus have simply been forgotten. While some of these meals may be best left buried in the past, others deserve a second chance. Here's a full hour of lunch recipes that we'd love to see make a comeback. Ham salad is a pretty light meal that works really nicely as an appetizer. Overall, the dish tends to resemble chicken salad or tuna and egg salad, but the star of this show is ham. Usually incorporated into the dish with the help of chopped vegetables and relishes, it got really popular in South America and Midwest despite having originated in North America. It takes influences from the cuisine of British Americans as well. To bind the vegetables with the ham, cooks will often use just a dash or very minimum amount of mayonnaise, salad cream, or ranch dressings that fall into those flavor profiles. A popular brand was Miracle Whip, and some other trendy choices to add to the salad were celery, pickle relish, and mustard. Ever remember Grandma getting one of these out in her fine china bowl? The meal is truly a beloved throwback. So your typical idea of a cake might be a baked delight with flour and frosting, but what about fish cakes, such as crab cakes? They need some love too. Luckily, they have enjoyed their fair share of spotlight in the days of our parents and their parents, and they work in many ways. A nutritional snack to amp up your diet, something to pair up with a good dip and bread or other seafood, or just a delicious meal all over for munching on. Grandmas would always get to work on making their best fish cake with just simple ingredients like breadcrumbs and crab meat, and the fresher the crustacean, the better the cooking. These crab cakes made the rounds pretty regularly in places like Maryland and Ohio or Mississippi, where fishing for crabs was really common. Tuna salad has managed to stand the test of time pretty well, and it gets even more simple than ham salad does. It is great that grandmas back then were always around to shatter misconceptions around how salad is an incredibly bland and boring concept. The ways they made these salads would get even the most stubborn, protein-only diehard on the bandwagon. You would be surprised what onion, celery, some spices, and mayo can do to tuna. It is an incredible comfort food classic, and it works with freshly caught tuna or canned tuna. Back in the 1900s, basic dressings were most commonly used, but towards the late 90s, stuff like Dijon dressings also got really popular, and they only made it healthier because you would find it much easier to eat an extra bowl or two. Which do you prefer if you remember growing up with this? Introduced in the heyday of frozen TV dinners, chicken pot pie rose to fame in the 1950s when pre-made lunches were the new trend. Chicken pot pie was advertised as a convenient lunch that could feed a whole family without any culinary effort. It definitely helped that the pie was a marvel, taste-wise. Think of a flaky pastry crust filled with chicken, vegetables, and creamy sauce. If your mouth is watering right now, just imagine how attracted families were by this pre-made lunch. Chicken pot pie was a lunch classic in households by the late 1950s, with almost every house having it as lunch at least once a week. Alas, as most processed frozen foods have downfalls, chicken pot pie also lost its footing in the pre-made market. Items like Lunchables and frozen fried foods gained more traction through TV advertisements, and chicken pot pie was replaced on the lunch table. Macaroni and cheese with tuna emerged as another budget-friendly lunch that delivered a unique taste to people. Inspired by tuna noodle casseroles, this dish was a seafood take on the classic macaroni and cheese. All people had to do was buy cheap canned tuna from the market and combine it with homemade macaroni and cheese, and in a few minutes, you had a filling meal. Considering seafood prices were roaring during the early 1940s and 1950s, tuna macaroni and cheese was adopted by people as a favorable lunch alternative to seafood items restaurants were serving. Soon enough, lunch tables across the states were using canned tuna as the main protein that enhanced the taste of their macaroni and cheese. Eventually, the food started losing fans as fresh seafood became cheaper in the States due to increased production. This led to a negative impact on the sales of canned tuna, and so tuna macaroni and cheese vanished from family tables. Moving on, we have the green bean casserole, which makes for a healthy lunch that was often served at holiday dinner. As the name suggests, this dish was a casserole made with green beans, cream of mushroom soup, and a hearty topping of crispy fried onions. Green bean casseroles recipe emerged from the Campbell Soup Company in 1955, which had long been producing canned cream of mushroom soups. They introduced the recipe as a way to increase sales of their newest soup, and this strategy was an instant success. Nearly 40% of their soups were sold to create the green bean casserole in both homes and restaurants. The dish remained a part of Thanksgiving lunches for a long while, before eventually households replaced it with a Thanksgiving casserole that had bits of everything we see on a Thanksgiving table. Fast food gained a lot of popularity in America during the 1940s, so it is not surprising that chili cheese dogs are next on our list. Hot dogs topped with homemade chili and melted cheese were sold at just about every roadside cart to people looking for a quick lunch. Best for workers who had short breaks, chili cheese dogs were the perfect balance of spices and flavors that would satisfy their hunger. In fact, the common man took such a liking to these hot dogs that several variations of a chili cheese dog recipe was released to the public in cooking sections of the daily newspaper. Soon after, chili cheese dogs were a comfort lunch served at family tables, with each house adding whichever toppings they preferred. You will not see this food served during family lunches anymore, because hot dogs today are reduced to their value as being a roadside food. Known affectionately as a hot dish in the Midwest, the tater tot casserole is a quintessential example of American comfort food. It was popularized in the 1950s as a convenient way to create a hearty meal with minimal ingredients. The casserole consists of a base layer of ground beef seasoned with onions, a binder of condensed mushroom or chicken soup, a layer of canned or frozen vegetables, and a top layer of crisp tater tots. As it bakes, the tater tots form a golden crust, providing a crunchy contrast to the creamy, savory mixture below. The casserole's popularity also demonstrates the post-war American innovation in using processed and prepackaged foods to save time in the kitchen, a trend that mirrored the nation's growing emphasis on convenience and efficiency in everyday life. Ham and cheese quiche, which gained prominence in American kitchens in the 1970s, is a refined yet simple dish, originating from French cuisine but fully embraced by American bakers. This savory pie combines a flaky pastry crust with a luscious filling of eggs, cream, diced ham, and shredded cheese, often Swiss or cheddar for extra flavor. The quiche is baked until the egg mixture sets into a creamy custard, perfect for slicing. It became popular not just for its delicious taste, but for its adaptability to various dining occasions, from brunches to dinner parties. The dish's versatility extends to the kitchen, where variations might include different types of meat, vegetables, or cheeses, depending on the cook's preference or the ingredients on hand. Moreover, the preparation of quiche contributed to its status as a dish that could be dressed up for guests or scaled down for a simple family meal. The taco salad, which emerged as a popular dish in American cuisine in the 1960s, is a notable example of Tex-Mex culinary fusion. The typical taco salad starts with a crunchy tortilla bowl filled with lettuce, seasoned ground beef, shredded cheese, diced tomatoes, and black olives, finished with dollops of sour cream and salsa. This dish illustrates the adaptability of Mexican cuisine to American tastes, incorporating more cheese and sour cream than traditional Mexican salads. Taco salads became particularly popular in the 1980s, often served at gatherings and potlucks due to their customizable nature, which allowed guests to tailor the toppings to their preferences. Taco salad's popularity also coincided with a growing interest in more casual dining experiences at home, where families and friends could interact in more relaxed settings. From the heart of Alabama come the fried chicken and biscuits that hold a significant place in soul food restaurants. Battered chicken, deep fried in oil to achieve a perfect golden brown crust paired with fluffy biscuits, were the new favorite dish across Alabama in the 1970s. From roadside cafes to diners across the state, chefs put this dish on the menu for an affordable price in the 70s. Alaska reindeer sausage was unlike any sausage America had ever seen, so it is no wonder that this grilled reindeer sausage that was served in a bun with sauerkraut became a go-to lunch for people. The lunch was especially served in summers when several vendors and restaurants started grilling a mix of beef, pork, and reindeer meat on a bun with sauerkraut. Not much is known about the Arizona cheese crisp, besides the fact that cheese crisps are beloved appetizers served during lunchtime. A rather peculiar dish made out of an open-faced flour tortilla that is covered in shredded cheese was extremely popular amongst Mexican restaurants in Arizona. Unlike cheese crisps, the chicken and dumpling soup from Arkansas is a healthier and filling meal that was popularized in the 1970s. A soup created from cooking chicken in water and using the remaining broth to boil dumplings emerged as the new comfort food for people across Arkansas. Talking about budget lunches, the Cobb salad from California was a popular dish amongst people in search of a healthy salad. Cobb salad originated from the Brown Derby restaurant in Los Angeles after the chef realized he had not eaten in a while. Throwing together random ingredients, he created a salad that everyone would eat after a long day. You must be pretty used to casseroles both from your mom's hands and your grandma's, but have you ever had a macaroni casserole straight from a veteran home chef of the 20th century? It can really change your view on the whole thing. This throws out all the typical casserole ingredients you might be used to, and you should look at this more like a pasta dish. Egg, milk, and some vegetables take center stage alongside the main star of the show, some classic macaroni. Some meats are used, but sparingly, and in the 1950s, people mostly skipped out on them. A thick layer of melted cheese on top with breadcrumbs and a side of ketchup. What is there not to love about this? It takes the concept of comfort food and cranks it up to 1,000. This next one is also a fusion of two different classics, so it is kind of a new take on both, just like macaroni casseroles. But have you ever thought about what a meatloaf burger would look like? It's not just something you might think about on a boring Saturday. It's a tried-and-true combo that has been around for ages. People may not know about it on a mainstream level nowadays, but it has been a local top 5 dish in states like Washington, New York, and Arkansas. Everyone in America loves a good meatloaf, and back in the days of our grandparents, it was one of the most common homemade lunches. What was one of the most regularly eaten takeout options? Burgers. Hamburgers, cheeseburgers, double patty behemoths, you name it. People ate it, and eventually they wanted to see what else could be done with the burger format, which works all too well. Lo and behold, the meatloaf burger made a name for itself rather quickly as a very filling and delicious meal to whip up at home. So Cobb salad was not actually made by a grandmother on the brink of innovation, but by Bob Cobb, who owned the famous chain of Brown Derby restaurants in LA and Hollywood, California. He made the chopped salad in 1937 and knew that America needed a salad with enough of the familiar stuff it was used to and enough of the healthy things it desperately needed. While they cannot take the credit for making it, grandmas all over the nation still rejoiced in delight when this fantastic dish did hit tables and restaurants all over. They finally had an easy, cheap, and quick way to get some much-needed nutrition into the family diet. All a Cobb salad takes is some boiled eggs, fried tomatoes, chicken, bacon, and other ingredients with a lettuce topping. You might think, why not throw in some spinach or kale, but we will get to some salads that use those too. For this one, lettuce worked the best with the textures of the meat that were in there. Going back to hearty lunch meals, pot roast is a family lunch that was made in homes using whichever ingredient was available at the time. Historically, pot roast can be traced back to Europe, where peasants and working-class homes regularly ate this lunch. Made using tougher cuts of meat and commonly available vegetables, America adopted this recipe as their own during the Great Depression. Economic perils allowed for pot roast to be a part of lunch tables, as people would use just about any vegetables and protein they could find. The most popular recipe was slow-cooked beef with carrots and potatoes topped with gravy. With the economic situation in the states improving, pot roast lost significant popularity amongst consumers as necessity was no longer something they had to factor into their cooking. When Spam was stocked up on the shelves of grocery stores, Americans used it to create their favorite lunch, a Spam sandwich. Spam, spicy and ham nicknamed thus, was sold as canned processed meat in markets where it found unprecedented success due to the great taste and cheap price tag. Eating processed meat on its own, however, was not as appealing as creating a sandwich was, and hence Spam sandwich was invented. People would either fry or grill Spam and sandwich it between bread with various condiments to ensure the lunch would not taste dry. Immediately, the masses took a liking to the cheap lunch. Just about anyone could cook up a Spam sandwich and please their stomachs during lunchtime. The sandwich remained popular until Spam started developing a bad reputation for having twice the amount of recommended fats for a healthy diet. This caused people to steer away from the processed meat. Continuing the trend of sandwiches, we bet you have never heard of a grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Recognized to be a sandwich that emerged as a twist on the classic peanut butter and jelly, this is just one of the many variations of sweet lunches famous in America. Staying true to the name, you grilled your regular peanut butter and jelly sandwich to produce a warm, melted, and gooey sandwich. You cannot really go wrong with peanut butter and jelly as your main condiments, so the new version of this old sandwich gained popularity throughout many states. Coming across a grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich nowadays is a rarity, as the sandwich's popularity decreased as a lunch item. This is due to how time-consuming grilling the sandwich was. Bacon cheddar potato skins epitomize the fusion of simple ingredients into a beloved American bar snack. This dish, which emerged prominently in the culinary scene during the 1970s, utilizes russet potatoes known for their thick skin and starchy content, making them ideal for baking and frying. The preparation involves halving the potatoes and scooping out most of the flesh, leaving about a quarter inch attached to the skin. The hollowed-out skins are then baked or deep-fried until crisp and golden. Once crisped, these skins are stuffed with generous amounts of sharp cheddar cheese and crisp, crumbled bacon. The cheddar is chosen for its melting properties and strong flavor, which pairs well with the smoky bacon. The filled skins are then returned to the oven until the cheese melts into a bubbly, golden pool. The dish's widespread popularity helped elevate the status of the potato from a simple side dish to a featured player in the culinary world. Lunchables were launched in 1988 by Oscar Mayer, a brand owned by Kraft Foods, aimed at simplifying school lunch preparation for busy parents while appealing to children with fun, customizable options. Originally conceived during a company brainstorming session, the idea was to create a product that could use the brand's existing meat products in a novel way. The initial Lunchables kit featured crackers, processed cheese, and sliced meats, and could be assembled into miniature sandwiches, mimicking the action of building with blocks, which resonated well with children. Over the years, Lunchables expanded to include various themes like pizzas and tacos. The marketing campaigns for Lunchables focused heavily on fun and convenience, successfully capturing the interest of both parents and children. The packaging also evolved from simple plastic trays to more vibrant and engaging designs that featured games and trivia, enhancing the appeal. These kits not only changed the way food is packaged, but also influenced children's lunch habits by providing a fun and interactive way to enjoy their midday meal. Combining two iconic American fast foods, the cheeseburger and French fries, into one dish, the cheeseburger French fry casserole emerged as a popular meal option in the late 1980s. This casserole layers seasoned ground beef mixed with ketchup, mustard, and chopped onions, topped with a layer of French fries, sprinkled with shredded cheese, and baked until golden and bubbly. Introduced in the kitchens of inventive home cooks during the 1990s, this casserole was a response to a growing interest in recreating fast food favorites at home, offering a fun and fuss-free dinner option that delighted both kids and adults alike. It seems eggs were pretty popular in the 70s, as Colorado's Denver omelet is next on our list. An omelet filled with diced ham, onions, bell peppers, and cheese was originally served on bread as a sandwich in Western America. Somewhat inspired by the egg foo young, the Denver omelet eventually developed into a breadless, only egg dish that was thoroughly enjoyed in Colorado as a lunch meal. The list would be incomplete without mentioning America's beloved lunch sandwiches. Grinders from Connecticut were popular in the 1970s as a go-to-lunch for many corporate workers during their breaks. Popping up at local diners and delis, Grinders was a long sandwich filled with deli meats, cheese, and vegetables. Continuing the sandwich trend onto Delaware, the locals created a unique recipe called crab cake sandwiches. People instantly adopted the sandwich as a favorable lunch to eat in work breaks. Delaware crabs recipes often get overlooked because Maryland and Chesapeake Bay are more famous in terms of seafood. Onto the Cuban sandwich, which first appeared in Florida and rose in ranks as a favorite lunch food. You could say the sandwich literally came from Cuba, as in the 1900s, Ybor City in Florida witnessed a huge influx of Cuban immigrants. They brought along Cuban sandwiches with them and started selling them in the state. Taste-wise, the sandwich was outwardly, so it is really no surprise people welcomed this lunch onto their lunch tables. Speaking of much-needed digestive health, apple salads did just that and were a commonly used weapon in the culinary arsenal of parents everywhere. A delectable apple salad with Honey-Crisp apples, dried cranberries, some pecans and grapes would make for a unique salad that could easily serve as an impromptu appetizer for a party or a star on a well-equipped salad bar. A slightly sweetened mayonnaise dressing also did a lot for this dish. And if you did not vibe too much with mayo as a dressing, you could always switch to French or ranch dressings. People used all kinds of apples besides Honeycrisp ones, such as Fuji apples or Braeburn apples or Granny Smith apples. The idea was to commit to some serious trial and error because the small difference in apples meant a lot for the dish. Tuna salad made a fresh comeback, which helped extend its shelf life in the American homemade breakfast or lunch scene. The tuna salad everyone was already pretty accustomed to was reconstructed, this time with seasonal and tropical fruits like apples or cranberries and served in fresh pita sliced in half. Not only was this really healthy, but it was also intensely high in protein and carbs, so it helped you build that all-important muscle while keeping you full until a suitable time in the evening. Cannot give in to those post-meal munchie cravings, right? Tuna salad was great served as is, but some people would go a step further by baking it for a while too. So far, we have two solid options for salads with a sandwich variation for one of them, but what if you do not like protein in your salads? Want them on the sweeter, more dessert-y side? Then molded cranberry orange salads have your name written on them wrapped up in a bow. Some normal or raspberry gelatin and frozen cranberries, plus apples and oranges cut into wedges, would make for an incredibly sweet and delightful salad that had everything you wanted in it taste-wise. It also did wonders for your skin with a steady supply of vitamins and the benefits of cranberries. So not only would grandmothers make this for their beloved families, but they would sneak a bowl on the side for themselves too. Despite the ingredients being relatively easy to get, this was more of an upper-class dish popular in affluent areas. Remember when we said that there are salads that use spinaches and kale? Welcome to the wedge salad, which uses spinach, lettuce, and kale with a blue cheese dressing to make one of the most impeccable salads you have ever had. If a home cook ever wanted to stun the crowd at a summer party or a Thanksgiving lunch, this wedge salad was the go-to option for stealing the show. Plus, the best part was that it was ready in just about 15 minutes. For the finish, you would sprinkle tomatoes, onion, and bacon on each part of the salad to add a delightful and much-needed crunch to go along with the greens. Would you try this? It certainly meets a lot of health needs that people have. Canned food was seemingly a fan favorite back in the day, as SpaghettiOs are the next forgotten lunch we want to bring back. Campbell's Soup Company took notice of the popularity pasta was gaining as a lunch food in the 1960s and invented SpaghettiOs. Sold for cheap in supermarkets, the dish was a basic tomato sauce with circular pasta rings instead of spaghetti noodles. SpaghettiOs were convenient and budget-friendly. Thus, they rapidly became a lunch staple for many people who needed a quick meal. Parents preferred giving their children SpaghettiOs because they were less messy, and children enjoyed the circular shape. Eventually, SpaghettiOs became a forgotten lunch as newer, easy-to-make lunches, like Kraft macaroni and spaghetti came along. People simply did not enjoy the taste of canned spaghetti and moved on from the iconic SpaghettiOs. Corned beef hash with eggs was popularized in the States after World War II when rationing meat was a common practice. One of state's biggest food processing companies, the Hormel Company, claims they bought corned beef hash to America in the 1950s and jump-started the invention of corned beef hash recipes. Since acquiring fresh meat was getting harder in the post-war era, people used corned beef to create a hash lunch. The recipe was simple. All you had to do was dice corned beef, mix it with potatoes and onions, then add a poached or fried egg on top. Corned beef was not really a fan favorite as the peculiar taste did not appeal to many people. This meant that as soon as necessity was not driving people's cooking, they forgot all about corned beef hash with eggs. Talking about rationed food, porcupine meatballs were a casserole dish that rose to fame during the Great Depression. Trust Americans to come up with creative recipes when times are rough because porcupine meatballs appear to be tasty and interesting to look at. Made with ground beef shaped into meatballs mixed with rice and simmered in tomato sauce, the dish is named porcupine because the rice protrudes from the meatballs when cooked, resembling the quills of the animal. The use of basic ingredients like ground beef, long-grain rice, canned tomato soup, and onions made the dish cheap. With economic situations improving, people forgot about the woes of the Great Depression, which is one of the reasons why porcupine meatballs are a forgotten lunch today. Popularized in American households in the early 1900s, so-tender Swiss steak involves a method of preparing a tougher cut of beef, such as round steak, by pounding or rolling before cooking. This tenderizing process, known as Swissing, lends the dish its name, although it has no connection to Switzerland. Traditionally, the steak is browned, then slow-cooked in a rich tomato and onion gravy, allowing the flavors to meld and the meat to become fork-tender. This dish showcased an economical approach to cooking during the Great Depression, providing a delicious solution for less desirable cuts of meat. The preparation of Swiss steak often became a Sunday dinner ritual, where its slow cooking could proceed alongside family activities, making it an integral part of the family dining experience. Introduced during the 1970s in the American broccoli casserole became a beloved dish that cleverly combined the need for convenience with the desire for flavorful meals. This casserole mixes chopped cooked ham and broccoli with a rich cheese sauce, often made creamier with the addition of a condensed soup, which is then topped with breadcrumbs or crushed crackers for texture and baked until golden. This dish exemplifies the era's ingenuity in using readily available, often pre-processed ingredients to create a dish that could serve as a one-pot meal, reducing both preparation time and cleanup. It became particularly favored for its versatility, allowing variations such as substituting chicken for ham or adding different vegetables, thus catering to a range of palates and pantry contents. The casserole's popularity surged as it appeared in magazine spreads and cooking shows, often recommended for its ability to double as a dish suitable for both weeknight family dinners and social gatherings. The introduction of Mexican lasagna in the 1980s showcased the seamless integration of Mexican flavors into traditional Italian architecture. This layered delight swaps out standard lasagna noodles for tortillas and the usual marinara for a zesty salsa, layering ground beef seasoned with taco spices, refried beans, and plenty of cheese. Each oven-baked layer melds into a textural symphony that's both familiar and novel. This dish not only catered to the growing American appetite for global flavors, but also provided a fun, festive twist on the classic lasagna, making it a favored choice at dinner parties and family nights. Its preparation, often involving family members in the assembly process, turned cooking into an interactive experience, further solidifying its popularity. Georgia's lunch special in the 1970s was the pimento cheese sandwich. Simply put, it was a sandwich filled with a creamy, tangy pimento cheese spread created using shredded cheese, mayo, and diced red pimentos. Pimento cheese was especially famous in Georgia because there was a surge in commercial advertisements of the spread in the state. Stepping aside from sandwiches, states like Hawaii preferred heartier meals like a plate lunch. Plate lunches were typically a meal consisting of rice, macaroni salad, and a meat entree. Customers would get several meat options like teriyaki chicken or Kahlua pork. It was somewhat akin to modern-day Chinese takeout, but localized for Hawaii. Idaho particularly loves their potatoes, so it's no surprise that the potato soup was their favorite lunch. With a staggering 300,000 acres of potatoes produced in the 1970s, Idaho locals explored what they could make with the influx of potatoes. In comes the potato soup, a creamy soup made with Idaho potatoes served with bacon and cheese. The sandwiches never lost their hold on America, as the Italian beef sandwich started showing up on menus in the 1970s in Illinois. The sandwich was a mix of thinly sliced roast beef with au jus and giardiniera served on an Italian roll. Sounds fancy, right? Well, that is exactly how locals in Illinois thought. Indiana took fancy to another level with their breaded pork tenderloin sandwich. Basically, the sandwich was a large piece of pork tenderloin that was breaded, then fried and served up on a bun. Created by a restaurateur named Nick Feinstein, he took the idea of veal sandwiches and replaced it with pork. The sandwich found great success in Indiana, achieving legendary status in the state. Fried sandwiches were not the only ones getting hyped up in the 70s. Iowa preferred the loose meat sandwich as a staple lunch food. Much like the famous Sloppy Joe's, loose meat sandwich was made using seasoned ground beef that was served between a set of buns. The sandwich was a little dry because there was no sauce, but the cheap price tag made up for it. The barbecue craze in Kansas peaked in the 1970s, so it is no wonder that they preferred the barbecue brisket sandwich. Sliced barbecue brisket served on a bun with sauce had every local in Kansas asking for more, even after their lunch breaks were over. The barbecue sauce in the sandwich was a real crowd pleaser as it completed the sandwich and made the taste delectable. Fried chicken is not the only iconic food Kentucky is known for, as the hot brown also originates from Kentucky. Originally created by Fred Schmidt, a chef at Brown Hotel in Louisville, the hot brown is an open-faced turkey sandwich topped with bacon, tomatoes, and Mornay sauce. Croque madames involve layers of melted cheese smothered between freshly baked, crisp white bread. And to top it all off, there's an intense, smoky flavor from the ham. The best part about it is that it takes minutes to make, and it was one of the more fancy dishes that people would create when they were feeling like having a bit of an extravagant dinner. Everyone deserves to treat themselves sometimes, but for home chefs, especially grandparents, the biggest treat is often just seeing everyone eat up every last bite of what they've made. That was never a problem if croque madames were the dish being served, because nobody could resist this classic American sandwich that did more than its fair share of justice to ham. Poached or lightly fried eggs as a topping also made it work a lot better. And by the way, they are called croque madames because the poached eggs seem to resemble women's luxury hats in the 90s. This sandwich would go great with some fresh fruit fluff salad, which was perfect for all kinds of occasions. Casual brunches, bridal showers, birthdays, and holiday gatherings all felt a little incomplete in the northern areas of America without this fruit fluff salad. It was a pretty good summer dish, and it had an assortment of fruits that worked well and bounced off of each other's textures and tastes. Stuff like a creamy lemon base supplemented with fresh strawberries or blueberries was a typical standard for a fresh fruit fluff salad, but you could also get tropical with kiwis and pineapples. A lot of things worked, and the reason it goes great with a croque madame is because ham was usually used as a topping for this dish too, so it was a great pairing. Another wonderful appetizer was broiled Parmesan tomatoes, which were ready in about half an hour and were the ideal sidekick for some boiled or fluffy eggs alongside biscuits. Fresh, ripe summer tomatoes, filled with concentrated flavor, topped with an olive oil spray and kosher salt, sound like a really good time, not to mention the main selling point. The Parmesan cheese added so much flavor and style to this that it became a trending option in the mid-90s and was a frequent sight in many cookbooks in the States, especially those aimed at housewives and home chefs. Many of Grandma's broiled Parmesan tomato recipes are available online, showing how they have stood the test of time and continue to be passed down within families. Stuffed potato pancakes are a delight to have on their own, but they go great with any kind of syrup or dip too. And if you had grandkids coming over and did not know what to make, this was a surefire bet. Potatoes have always been a massive staple of American cuisine and culture, partly because they form the basis of many simple, affordable dishes. An example of this is how in the Depression there were several potato-based dishes that people regularly adopted, and they stuck in the cultural landscape of American cooking much longer after the dust from the recession had settled. In states like Ohio, Oregon, and Idaho, it is still common to see potato-centered dishes taking the #1 spot. So imagine the rounds they made back when they were truly in style. Taking a break away from the McDonald's and the Wendy's, stuffed potato pancakes usually have bits of meat stuffed in them like sausages, pork, or ground beef. And it is not only packed with flavor, but a great dish to eat if you are looking to bulk up too. Grandma does know best, after all. You might be familiar with bologna because of its popularity as a deli meat today, but fried bologna sandwiches were in a league of their own back in the 1960s. Categorized as a Southern classic, fried bologna sandwich was brought into the USA by German immigrants. The sandwich was mostly popular as a school lunch, as cafeterias would serve up hot fried bologna slices on bread with cheese to students during lunch hour. While school lunches had a reputation for being average food, the fried bologna sandwich was exempted from such notions. Children loved when fried bologna was on the school cafeteria menu, and parents were happy that their children were finally content with their school lunches. Fried bologna sandwiches remained a popular lunch choice until schools shifted to foods that could be cooked in batches instead of sandwiches that had to be individually assembled. Make way for more sandwiches, as sardine sandwiches are next on our list. A fairly easy lunch to cook up, sardine sandwiches used canned sardines that were mashed and mixed with mayonnaise or mustard to create a umami-flavored sandwich spread. Like we previously mentioned, seafood was getting expensive and families needed alternatives like canned fish to survive the lack of seafood options. Home chefs turned towards canned sardines to prepare a delicious sandwich with just a few ingredients that were laying around the house. Surprisingly, the sandwich was well received by the masses, and it became a go-to seafood food that you could cook up during family lunches. Unfortunately, sardine sandwiches suffered the same fate as tuna macaroni and cheese, as the prices of fresh fish decreased in the States due to increased fish farming, leading to tinned fish becoming less popular in homes. Our list of forgotten lunches would be incomplete without mentioning bean sandwiches. You may not have even heard of this vegetable-based take on sandwiches, but decades ago, bean sandwiches were part of many lunch tables. Home chefs preferred this healthy take on sandwiches, even though cooking beans was a tedious task because you would end up with a flavorful and well-seasoned meal. According to the traditional recipe, the sandwich was cooked beans that were sometimes mashed and served on bread with toppings like vegetables and cheese. Like any other sandwich, the bean sandwich was highly customizable and satisfied just about anyone's cravings. If you had leftover beans from dinner, making a bean sandwich could be your best option. Since people were conscious of leftovers and wanted the most value out of all of their meals, bean sandwiches were a good way to utilize beans. Still, the combination was a little odd, and not a lot of states would pick up this lunch option. As meat delis opened up across the states, bean sandwiches were forgotten to be a thing of the past. Cabbage rolls trace their roots to Eastern European cuisines, brought to the United States by immigrant communities. This dish involves steamed cabbage leaves wrapped around a filling of mixed ground meats, rice, and herbs, then baked in a tomato-based sauce. Each component, from the soft cabbage exterior to the rich, flavorful filling, plays a pivotal role in crafting a dish that is both filling and balanced. Introduced to American tables by the early 20th century, cabbage rolls became a meaningful dish among families, often prepared for large gatherings and special events due to their somewhat labor-intensive preparation. The recipe's ability to be made in large batches and stored for later use made it practical for both festive occasions and efficient home cooking, bridging the gap between tradition and convenience in the American culinary repertoire. This festive dish, emerging in American culinary circles in the mid-20th century, cleverly combines the contrasting flavors of sweet pineapple and savory cheese. The pineapple cheese ball consists of cream cheese enriched with finely chopped pineapple, green peppers, and sometimes added ham or pecans, rolled into a ball and coated with crushed nuts. The dish captures the post-war American enthusiasm for novel flavor combinations and party foods that could double as conversation starters. Its popularity at social events can be attributed to both its taste and its decorative appearance, which made it a visually appealing centerpiece on buffet tables. The pineapple cheese ball also illustrates the period's innovation in using canned ingredients, which were celebrated for their convenience and year-round availability, allowing hosts to whip up impressive treats without extensive preparation. Crab Louis salad, reputed to have originated on the West Coast in the early 1900s, is a luxurious ensemble of crab meat, hard-boiled eggs, tomatoes, asparagus, and iceberg lettuce, dressed in a creamy sauce made from mayonnaise and chili sauce. This salad is often linked with the dining rooms of San Francisco and Seattle, where it was served as a gourmet item in the early 20th century. The inclusion of Dungeness crab, a regional specialty, underscores the salad's connection to the Pacific Northwest's seafood bounty. Its enduring popularity was fueled by the dish's association with elegance and affluence, making it a prized feature on hotel and restaurant menus. Additionally, crab Louis salad is a testament to the American culinary tradition of adopting and adapting regional ingredients to create dishes that become part of the national gastronomy. Another cheap lunch item on this list is the Louisiana po' boy sandwich. Po', short for poor boy, was a sandwich typically filled with fried shrimp, oysters, or roast beef, and was served on French bread. Speaking of seafood, how could we forget the iconic lobster rolls from Maine? Fresh lobster meat served on a split top roll with a light butter and parsley dressing was a dream lunch for people in Maine. This heavenly creation was a fan favorite in Maine, where the cheapest seafood options before lobster roll was tinned fish. Keeping the seafood trend of the 70s going, crab soup from Maryland became quite famous amongst locals this year. Crab used in this soup came straight from Chesapeake Bay, which was a local specialty in Maryland, making the soup an instant hit amongst locals looking for a good lunch that tasted just like home. It seemed that soups were quite a crowd favorite in the 1970s, as clam chowder was another iconic lunch served up in Massachusetts. Imagine enjoying a hot, creamy bowl of soup made with fresh clams, potatoes, onions, and a side of oyster crackers during your lunch break. Soups were not the only lunches rising in ranks across the states, as Michigan's Coney dog was one of the most iconic lunches in America. Nicknamed Coney dog, this hot dog was a beef frankfurter, wrapped in a steamed bun and topped with savory beef chili, mustard, and onions. Minnesota created the iconic Juicy Lucy cheeseburger that needs no introduction today. Created when a local customer requested for 2 hamburger patties with a slice of cheese stuffed in the middle, the Juicy Lucy met with instant success when it appeared on menus in 1960. The catfish po' boy was lesser known across America and more of a Mississippi special. A true working-class lunch, the catfish po' boy sandwich was born during a strike when workers were protesting for rights. During this time, local restaurant owners Benny and Clovis Martin gave out free sandwiches made with fried catfish, lettuce, tomato, and remoulade sauce. Since then, these sandwiches were sold at a cheap price during lunch breaks. Missouri's iconic lunch was neither a sandwich nor a soup, it was the St. Louis-style pizza. This thin crust pizza, topped with Provolone cheese and cut in squares, found popularity with the locals of Missouri who preferred square pizza during lunch breaks. The thin, cracker-like crust made for a light and airy pizza that was perfect to snack on before going back to work. The bison burger is definitely not something you will be snacking on. Montana's favorite lunch in the 70s and even today is a burger made using lean bison meat sourced directly from Montana. Runza was a famous sandwich in Nebraska during the 1970s, attaining the status of being an iconic lunch. Though the sandwich originated from Europe, it found a new home in Nebraska where people started referring to the sandwich as a regional dish. Nevada's casinos created the iconic 50-cent shrimp cocktail that attracted heaps of people in 1970. Everything from affordability to taste drew people from all over the country to visit Nevada for its simple and unique shrimp cocktail. The shrimp cocktail was also one of the first seafood lunch items in Nevada, thus why it gained popularity. Massachusetts was not the only state chowing down on hearty chowder, as New Hampshire was also consuming this iconic soup in the 70s. Recipe-wise, the chowder in Hampshire was different as they used more fish than clams in their soup. Taylor ham sandwich in New Jersey was another iconic sandwich that people loved eating during their lunch hour. Invented by Senator John Taylor in Hamilton Square, the sandwich truly found popularity in the 1970s when restaurants put this Taylor ham, egg, and cheese sandwich on their menus. Green chilies are an iconic part of New Mexico cuisine, so it is no surprise that the green chili cheeseburger was a go-to lunch for locals in the 70s. This was a fusion burger topped with a chili stew made out of green chilies and melted cheese on a patty. Though a heavy lunch, the tangy and spicy variation of cheeseburgers was just too tempting for people. New York is well known for its pastrami on rye sandwich that was popularized during the 70s as a popular deli lunch that was affordable. Soon enough, delis across New York served the sandwich at a cheap price, making workers grab the sandwich during their breaks. We have dishes here that are fit for parties, family gatherings, and lunches, but what about something that works as a lunch and can be served at a wedding? Cucumber party sandwiches are exactly what we are referring to. And if you thought a dish that could work on both your couch and next to your best friend in their wedding did not exist, think again. Maybe you do not think too highly about cucumbers, and we would not blame you. Recently, not a lot of hit dishes have made much use of them. That explains why these went out of style. But tracking back just a few decades ago, it was a pretty common sight to see a long table lined up with cucumbers, layered between herb cream cheese fillings, lemon juice sprinkled all over, sitting in the middle of two perfectly toasted slices of bread. Ambrosia fruit salads are one of the finest ones on this list so far, and they had all kinds of fancy and fresh ingredients to get the party going. You would not think yogurt, mandarin oranges, pineapples, mini marshmallows, and coconut could synchronize so well, especially in a dish like a salad. But they were a crowd favorite for lunch dates and home cooking. Some whipped cream on the top made it a very creamy and delightful option to go for if you wanted to watch the calories and still enjoy yourself. Think of it as like a Watergate salad without the pistachio. Some Hawaiian home chefs would mix this with a typical Hawaii salad, which usually also had bananas and cherries, as well as cottage cheese. Which would you prefer if you saw both sitting pretty on a salad bar? Speaking of wanting to watch your waistline while still feeling you are eating food meant for humans, roast beef finger sandwiches were the go-to for that genre of food because they ticked most boxes nutritionally while also having an explosive and vibrant taste. Something between a mid-work deli sandwich picked up from the corner of the street and an aromatic beef plate with veggies made by your grandmother, roast beef finger sandwiches offered the best of three worlds: size, taste, and health all in one, since they were usually served at brunches or bridal showers in a min sandwich format. Health-wise, they gave you more than just a good dose of protein, and that depended on what you would use as toppings. You could use olives, peppers, or other spices, as well as lettuce, tomatoes, and spinach. How do you prefer your sandwiches to be, mini or otherwise? Pickled pig feet might make you cringe right now, but they were quite the lunch in the southern USA. Simply put, the lunch was a plate full of pig feet that had been pickled in vinegar and spices. Some might have eaten pickled pig feet as part of larger meals like soups or stews, but it was not uncommon for people to snack on them as it is. Historically, pig's feet used to be considered an upper-class delicacy, but with the commercialization of processed food, pickled pig feet became available at local supermarkets. This opened the delicacy up to several people who had never thought of such a lunch existing. Though pig feet remained a staple lunch in southern states, it was inferred that the taste was not why people stocked up on the food, rather it was because they were sold for cheap in markets. Children definitely disliked the jelly-like vinegary taste, so it makes sense that the food started vanishing from shops during the 2000s as fewer people bought pickled pig feet. Bologna-like luncheon meat was an affordable cold cut that America loved due to its affordability and customizability. Unlike boring sandwiches, bologna boats were a fun and appealing way to feed children during lunchtime, as the shape of bologna boats attracted younger audiences. What is so appealing about the shape, you might ask? Well, chefs hollowed out bologna slices and shaped them into an oval that would hold ingredients like cheese or relish. The slices were then baked to ensure bologna boats would hold their shape when being consumed. A fun addition lunch across the state eventually became a forgotten lunch, as the preparation time for bologna boats was too time-consuming. Home chefs needed a quick and suitable lunch to make, and bologna boats were not meeting the requirement anymore. Cowboy stew is a robust concoction traditionally associated with the outdoor cooking of American cattle herders. This dish typically includes a base of ground beef or other meat, combined with a hearty blend of potatoes, onions, beans, corn, and tomatoes, stewed in a richly seasoned broth. The stew's origins are rooted in the practical needs of cowboys during cattle drives across the American West, requiring meals that could be cooked in a single pot over an open fire. Cowboy stew's durability and popularity among outdoor workers underscore its role in the folklore of the American frontier. The recipe's evolution over time incorporated local and available ingredients, showcasing the stew's flexibility and the improvisational skills of those who made it. Corn soufflé presents a refined twist on traditional American ingredients, combining the native sweetness of corn with the airy texture of a classic French soufflé. Introduced into American kitchens primarily in the early 20th century, this dish features corn kernels blended with a mixture of milk, butter, and egg yolks, with stiffly beaten egg whites folded in to give it a light, fluffy consistency. The soufflé is then baked until it rises and turns golden, offering a delicate balance of flavor and texture. The dish highlights the versatility of corn, a staple American crop, by showcasing it in a form that contrasts dramatically with its usual preparations. This adaptation not only speaks to the culinary creativity of the time, but also to the integration of European techniques with American ingredients. Cornbread-topped frijoles blends the heartiness of traditional Mexican beans with the comfort of Southern American cornbread, creating a casserole that is both nourishing and satisfying. This dish layers seasoned beans, often pintos or black beans, cooked with peppers, onions, and spices, topped with a layer of cornbread batter that bakes into a crusty topping. Originating from a blend of Native American and Mexican cooking techniques, the dish was adapted over time to include a variety of beans and sometimes meat, making each rendition a local specialty. The dish not only satisfies with its rich flavors and textures, but also serves as a practical one-dish meal that could easily feed a family or a gathering. Cornbread-topped frijoles became favored for its economical use of basic pantry staples and its ability to be prepared ahead of time, making it ideal for communal meals and family dinners. North Carolina loves pork more than deli meats, so it's no surprise that the local pulled pork BBQ sandwich was a lunch staple here. As BBQ restaurants started gaining popularity in the 70s, North Carolina's slow-cooked, spicy, and vinegary pulled pork sandwich was one of the most iconic ways to eat pork. Locals would pair shredded pork with barbecue sauce and put it between 2 slices of bread, and lunch would be served. During lunchtimes in North Dakota, making knoofle soup was common in the 70s. Dakota had excess wheat production during this year, and the best way to use the flour was to create a creamy soup with dumplings and potatoes. It helped that knoofle soup was the perfect remedy for North Dakota's freezing temperatures, so every household was serving this perfectly balanced soup as a lunch meal. Cincinnati chili was the most interesting lunch item Ohio had to offer. Chili served over spaghetti and topped with cheese, onions, and beans was the new way to eat spaghetti. Cincinnati chili only ever gained popularity in Ohio, unable to find fans in other states, but it still remains an iconic creation because of the unique flavors the dish offered. The chicken fried steak lunch was once the favorite dish of Oklahoma. This thinly pounded chicken that is breaded and fried was served with gravy to chicken fried steak enthusiasts across Oklahoma. Mostly popular during lunch hours, this dish was always on the specials menu. Restaurants in Oklahoma would make it a point to list this dish down as a steak, not fried chicken. Soon enough, this dish was strong competition to regular beef steaks. Fresh Dungeness crab served on toasted bread was Oregon's top pick when it came to unique lunches in the 70s. There was an ongoing debate in Oregon about the best way to eat Dungeness crab meat. Then came the crab sandwich, served on bread or a roll, which won people's hearts. It was not long before this sandwich was renowned statewide. You cannot mention Pennsylvania without the Philly cheesesteak. Thinly sliced steak with cheese on a hoagie roll was the invention of brothers Pat and Harry Oliveri. By the 70s, the Philly cheesesteak sandwich was the go-to order for every person looking for a filling lunch. Found at just about any deli, the sandwich was an invention Pennsylvania is proud of. Stuffies are quite a unique lunch served up in Rhode Island. Served in clamshells, the dish is made of chopped clams mixed with several spices and bread, then it is baked. While Rhode Island has several seafood dishes available, stuffies were easy to eat and were a quick snack for those on a tight schedule, making them a popular lunch food. Found in the Charleston Recipes Cookbook in the 1950s, shrimp and grits emerged as a popular lunch in South Carolina. The creamy shrimp and grits recipe embedded in one of the pages would become the most popular breakfast and lunch food in households across South Carolina. In 1976, shrimp and grits was even declared as South Carolina's official state food. Perfect for themed dinners or Christmas lunches, sangria gelatin rings are about as high class as they sound, and they are as close as you would get to fine dining at home. Well, at least if you did not want to spend half your day or the night prepping for the meal. These were especially popular in 1952 as part of the menu for French-American or gelatin-based restaurants. The best part about these were that they were pretty easy to make, and they involved adding boiling wine to gelatin, then cooling it, adding in berries and grapes to finish it off after it was done thickening. Despite how it might feel too sweet, it actually only had around 117 calories, so you could demolish a bowl or three without worrying too much. Although most commonly associated with the 1950s, especially throughout Middle America, the iconic tuna noodle casserole was actually first created in the Pacific Northwest in 1930, and it was quite polarizing. People either hated it or loved it, and there was no in between, no, it's just all right, or, well, it's not so bad. People had very divisive beliefs because they just had not experienced something that fused like three kinds of things together like this. Noodles and tuna is one thing, casserole and tuna is another, but the three all together? Some considered it blasphemous to cooking standards, and some loved it, claiming that it was breathing new life into each of the dishes. Speaking of fusion foods, ever imagined a spring roll but with meat inside? Sausage rolls were more or less that idea brought into reality, and they worked just as well as they do in imagination. While most people thought the idea was at first a bit too British for the average American tastes, when people gave it a genuine try, they found that sausage rolls were a lot better than anybody was giving them credit for. Since their birth, they would use ground sausage meat instead of sausage in casing, and they were like a better version of pigs in a blanket. More like a proper meal than a munching snack, but depending on the size you would go for, they could work well as both. Introduced during the late 1980s as American interest in Asian cuisine surged, pineapple ginger chicken stir-fry represents a fusion that captures the essence of both American and Asian tastes. This dish combines juicy, sautéed chicken pieces with sharp ginger and sweet pineapple, delivering a dish that bursts with contrasting flavors. The addition of bell peppers and onions adds a crunchy texture, enhancing the overall sensory experience. The use of ginger, not only for its flavor but also for its reputed health benefits, coincided with a growing American fascination with healthier eating options. It exemplifies how global ingredients were becoming more accessible in local supermarkets, enabling home cooks to explore international recipes with ease. As Mediterranean diets gained popularity in the United States for their health benefits, the layered Mediterranean dip emerged as a favored choice for its delectable mix of flavors and healthful attributes. Widely introduced in the 1990s, this dish layers hummus, tzatziki, olives, diced tomatoes, cucumbers, and feta cheese, each layer offering a unique texture and flavor. Though traditionally served with pita chips as an appetizer, this dish also serves beautifully as a substantial lunch option, especially when paired with a fresh salad or grilled vegetables. Its popularity highlights a growing American trend towards dishes that are not only nutritious, but also substantial enough to serve as a main course at casual lunches or gatherings. Zucchini panzanella salad, an adaptation of the classic Italian bread salad, began to capture the attention of American food enthusiasts in the late 1990s. This version introduces zucchini and robust Italian bread, grilled to perfection, tossed with ripe tomatoes, red onions, and fresh basil, all dressed in a balsamic vinaigrette. The innovation lies not just in the ingredients, but in the method of preparation that emphasizes the grilling of vegetables and bread to enhance their flavors before combining them with the dressing. This approach not only maximizes the textures and flavors, but also aligns with a growing preference for grilled foods. The salad's popularity grew as it became synonymous with summer dining, often featured in outdoor meals and barbecues where a light yet satisfying dish was required. Chislic is a dish unique to South Dakota and was perfect for lunch hours. With a simple preparation of cutting up red meat into cubes, then either grilling it or deep frying the meat, The dish would be ready in a matter of minutes and served quickly. Chislic was brought to the state by a German-Russian man named John Hellwarth, who popularized the dish amongst locals. Tennessee's Nashville hot chicken was served to hungry workers during lunch break. The commercialization of fried chicken restaurants in the 70s allowed for this spicy, crispy fried chicken to grow in popularity amongst people in Tennessee. The spicy fried chicken was a local soul food that many African-American working-class communities consumed in Tennessee before hot chicken was commercialized into the American market. Who thought Frito chips could be a main ingredient in an iconic lunch, but the Frito pie from Texas proves otherwise. A dish made from Frito's corn chips topped with chili, cheese, and onions was created by Frito's owner's mother. Frito pie gained fame due to the affordability and availability of the ingredients. A rather negative-sounding lunch, the funeral potatoes tasted delicious to everyone who tried it. A cheesy potato casserole made with potato mash and vegetables was a go-to dish at gatherings. The leftovers would often be packed as lunch for people the next day, which is why these potatoes earned their spot as iconic lunch meals. Today, when you think of funeral potatoes, people have nothing but positive things to say. Now, we really have no explanation for how the cheddar and apple sandwich was a fan favorite in Vermont. This sandwich was made with sharp Vermont cheddar and crisp apple slices and is said to be inspired by cheddar cheese on apple pies. Taste-wise, the sandwich was interesting, both sweet and savory, but most people added roasted turkey to their lunch to enhance the flavor. Virginia's Brunswick stew originated from the state and was famous because it was once made with squirrel meat. As restaurants looked to add the dish to their lunch menus, they had to find a way across the use of squirrels. Since then, the hearty stew is made using chicken, vegetables, and beans. Locals enjoyed the taste a lot and adopted the new recipe, making Brunswick stew a local delicacy. While the rest of the country was making cheeseburgers and fried chicken sandwiches, Washington created the salmon burger. In the 70s, this burger was particularly popular amongst people who enjoyed fish cakes. It was basically a fish cake made with fresh salmon stuffed between bread in a hamburger style and served with tartar sauce. The burger was a welcome change from normal cheeseburgers, which is why it is so notable. Soft rolls stuffed with pepperonis were West Virginia's favorite lunch. Pepperoni rolls first emerged as a popular lunch that coal miners would eat as the protein and fats would keep them energized. In the 70s, local bakeries started producing pepperoni rolls and selling them to locals, cementing it as regular lunch in West Virginia. Wisconsin's beer cheese soup was an interesting soup rendition that was a staple lunch in the state. Originating from Germany, the creamy soup made with beer and cheddar cheese made its way into America through cookbooks. The chicken fried steak sandwich in Wyoming was a variation of chicken steaks that found success in many states. During the 70s, chicken steaks were gaining fame, and restaurants in Wyoming decided to put together a sandwich topped with gravy and stuffed with breaded fried chicken. Liverwurst and onion sandwiches were some of the least popular lunches introduced by local shops as a lunch option. Liverwurst was a variant of liver sausages that were cooked and paired with onions served on rye bread. Sounds unappealing, right? Well, that was the general consensus of everyone who ate this food in America. You would wonder why a simple 3-ingredient sandwich did not gain significant traction as a lunch staple, and the answer was easy. Liverwurst had a strong, overpowering taste that did not appease the taste palates of the common man. This was especially common in New York, where local delis started removing liverwurst sandwiches from their menu because of how disliked they were. Today, the sandwich is barely available in any state, and it would be rare to find a home chef cooking liverwurst sandwiches for their lunch tables. Yet another sandwich made using cold cuts were head cheese sandwiches. Where the sandwich originated from is unclear, however, food critics trace head cheese or meat jelly back to Europe. Beware, as this cold cut is made from unusual ingredients, including the flesh and meat from the heads of calves or pigs. Yes, that is where head cheese gets the name from. This cold cut is paired with mustard and pickles, then served cold on a slice of bread as a lunch food for those looking for an interesting sandwich. European immigrants brought head cheese with them to America, and much like the liverwurst sandwich, head cheese was not well received by locals. As the meat jelly was introduced in markets, many locals bought it as the price was economical, and they could try out a new dish. but the taste was so unlikable that people decided to not make this lunch a regular food, and head cheese was effectively forgotten. Yet another sandwich made using cold cuts were head cheese sandwiches. Where the sandwich originated from is unclear. However, food critics trace head cheese or meat jelly back to Europe. Beware, as this cold cut is made from unusual ingredients, including the flesh and meat from the heads of calves or pigs. Yes, that is where head cheese gets the name from. This cold cut is paired with mustard and pickles, then served cold on a slice of bread as a lunch food for those looking for an interesting sandwich. European immigrants brought head cheese with them to America, and much like the liverwurst sandwich, head cheese was not well received by locals. As the meat jelly was introduced in markets, many locals bought it as the price was economical and they could try out a new dish. But the taste was so unlikable that people decided to not make this lunch a regular food, and head cheese was effectively forgotten. Last on this list is the mutton leg, which was a common lunch food cooked on special occasions. Mutton has always been the least preferred meat choice in American cuisine, so it is no surprise that the food is now forgotten. However, there was a time when special occasions called for a roasted or braised mutton leg. Each chef had their pick of what spices they wanted to add to their mutton leg and what sides were to be served next to this piece of meat. Commonly, people would eat mutton leg with rice and potatoes, making for a flavorful yet heavy lunch. Today, mutton has largely disappeared from lunch tables owing to the lack of popularity amongst American chefs and the increased prices on mutton cuts. Lentil soup's place in the American culinary landscape was solidified as nutritional awareness rose in the 1980s. This humble soup, made from lentils simmered with carrots, celery, onions, and a medley of spices, became prized not only for its comforting warmth, but also for its nutritional powerhouse status, offering high protein and fiber content. The simplicity of its ingredients and the one-pot cooking method appealed to those seeking wholesome, minimal-effort meals. Additionally, lentil soup's adaptability to incorporate various spices and additional vegetables allowed it to remain a favorite among those experimenting with global cuisines, easily taking on flavors from different culinary traditions. The introduction of herbed rice pilaf into American dining rooms in the late 1980s can be seen as part of a broader trend towards incorporating refined grains into everyday meals. This dish, prepared by sautéing rice with onions and butter before simmering in chicken or vegetable broth, is enhanced with a selection of herbs such as parsley, thyme, and rosemary. The preparation of rice pilaf was often highlighted in culinary schools and cooking shows as a basic skill, illustrating the technique of infusing flavors into rice through the choice of broth and herbs. The dish's popularity was boosted by its versatility, serving as an elegant side that complemented a wide range of main dishes, from roasted meats to vegetarian entrees, making it a useful recipe in the repertoire of any aspiring home chef. Wasn't this a wonderful, nostalgic journey through our favorite lunch recipes? If so, give us a like, subscribe, and let's keep those recipes alive.